Speaking bleaker than Memphis. Wait, piquing your interest with heat, seeking intention.
Hey, wait a minute.
What, man?
Who are you? I'm Charlie Tuna.
Competition, listen.
Go for what you know. And shake your soul.
Bringing it straight to you.
Bend your knees a little. Go for what you know. And shake your soul.
Put the light in his roll.
I'm from the city where they buried Al Capone and house music was born. Robert Kelly performed and heavy styles was shown. I've made hijra and settled miles from home. Coast to coast, LA from Chicago. With the apostles spitting this gritty gospel. The ghetto diplomat, apocalyptic rap. I'm getting...
Okay. Everything's terrible. Hold on. There we go. All right. Well, welcome to episode, what is this, 4, I think, of Cooking with Baber. Hopefully the new setup works. I think if people can hear me, just let me know. I think I should be able to see the chat today, so try to answer some questions. We do have a lot to do. Well, not a lot to do, but we have a little bit too much to do for the time. So we're going to go ahead and get started. First things we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and get some water on a boil. And also preheat the oven. So I think we want it at 350. So go ahead and get that taken care of. And then we also are going to make some ridiculous garlic bread today. And that requires making some garlic confit, which is basically garlic slowly cooked in this case, butter, but confit just means cooked in fat at a low temperature. So we've already got, let's see, where's my camera here? Something like, 15 cloves of garlic and a stick of butter. I'm going to go ahead and add a couple more cloves just for, fun. You don't have to smash these, but I kind of like it, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. Basically just put it flat on the cutting board, smash it with your knife. Obviously you want to not have the knife facing upwards, but, as long as you do it slightly downwards, it's pretty much totally safe. And it just, opens up the garlic, gets it ready to get nice and caramelized. So we'll just take that, add it to our butter on a nice low heat, and that's going to go for about 45 minutes or so. So again, we're going to be cutting it down to the wire, but I think we'll get it done. So the garlic bread is really simple. It's really just, bread, which in this case, where did it go? There it is. Just like a nice kind of flattish loaf of bread. I would kind of prefer if it was longer and narrower, but whatever. This will do just fine. This one's also a little bit dense, but again, work with what you have. This is going to be great. We're probably not going to use the whole thing, but it's just going to be butter, garlic, some cheese, some parsley, salt. Real simple, but real good. It's definitely worth the 45 minutes that it takes to make. The other thing that we're making that takes a little bit of time because you have to bake it off is the spaghetti casserole. This is a recipe I grew up eating. My mom made this maybe once a month, maybe once every couple months. Just really hearty. It's a spaghetti casserole is kind of like a lasagna, but instead of big wide noodles, it uses spaghetti, or in this case angel hair. I like the angel hair. It's just obviously a finer noodle. Takes a lot less time to cook. For this recipe, I think it just makes sense. It would be perfectly fine with spaghetti as well, but the angel hair is my personal favorite. So we're going to go ahead and get started with that. The recipe that I posted or that I put in the doc was kind of the original recipe. I don't know if I think I added my mom's kind of handwritten version of it. But essentially, it's the kind of recipe that has, packs of Lipton onion soup mix, and it's, very light on seasoning aromatics. It's basically just, meat and some tomatoes, that seasoning packet, maybe a couple things like oregano, and then, you pretty much just hold it all together with cheese and noodles, and that's the dish. We're going to try to make it a little bit nicer today. So we're going to do, some fresh garlic, some fresh onion. I forgot to buy the onion soup mix, so we don't even have that. So we're going to add our own kind of spice blend. The onion soup mix is mostly just dehydrated onions, so we're going to do fresh onion instead, and maybe a little onion powder. But yeah, less talking, more cooking. Go ahead and do the standard, onion dice. I think I've covered this, a couple of times already, but in case you haven't been here or you're just, still trying to master it, we're cutting off the end that doesn't have the little wispy bits, peeling off the outer layer, or after we cut it in half. I'm going to try very hard not to get food all over my computer, which is now dangerously close to the cutting board, but, that's life. Let's see, other than that, like I said, this is going to take a lot of time, but it's not a lot of active time. So once we kind of get this sauce going, we're not going to really have a lot to do, especially once we get the casserole in the oven. We're basically going to have nothing to do. So I'll probably, do a little bit of cleaning up, answer some questions, have some Ellie time, obviously, and, we can go from there. I thought about trying to pack a dessert into this lesson because, we had that extra time. It felt like a lot. I was going to try for maybe like an Instant Pot cheesecake or something, or maybe like I don't know, chocolate mousse or whatever. If people have interest in dessert, it's not really my specialty. I don't actually eat a lot of dessert, but feel free to let me know and I can, reassess for next time. Also don't want to take away from the thunder of our delightful dessert or pastry chefs that we have doing these demos as well. So again, just a nice, I'll call this like a medium dice or so. We're going to cook this down pretty good. Sounds like our garlic is cooking a little too hot, so we're going to maybe it's sizzling away over here. Again, you don't want it on like the lowest possible heat, because you do want to get, some cooking happening, but you definitely don't want to burn your garlic. It'd be really sad to burn 15 cloves of garlic all in one go. It'll make the kitchen smell terrible and ruin your garlic bread, so try to avoid it. When I'm cooking for real, and I guess this is cooking for real, but when I'm not cooking as like a demo, I do try to clean up as much as I can while I'm going. It just makes my life so much easier. Nobody likes having that whole kitchen full of dirty dishes and pans and whatnot. So usually by the time I'm serving the food, my goal is to have the only things that are dirty in the kitchen be the pan or whatever it is I'm pulling the food out of, and then the plates that I'm serving the food on. So it doesn't always happen. Sometimes meals are more involved than others, but living the dream when you do make that happen. I don't usually recommend like sautéing stuff in olive oil, especially extra virgin olive oil, just because it's really not made for that. The recipe calls for it. Don't really care. It's happening. Also, what I pulled out, put on the counter. So there we go. This pan heats up really fast, so we're gonna go ahead and get the onions in there. If your pan doesn't heat up that fast, you probably want to wait. Like, usually want to do hot pan, then oil. Let the oil heat up for a second, and then add whatever you're trying to cook. Whenever you add, so a pan has I'll call like crevices or like little micro cracks. The pan is cold; those cracks are as open as they're ever going to be. When you heat the pan up, it starts to close because obviously when you heat metal, it expands, so it closes up those cracks. And then when you add the oil, it kind of like even more fills them in and smooths them over. So, your food is going to stick a lot less. My oven is preheated. So your food is going to stick the minimal amount when you do hot pan into oil and then add your food. So I'm not looking for a ton of color here, so I might actually turn this down. This is getting a little bit away from me here. We're just going to sweat these. I am going to add some salt. That also reminds me. I like pretty heavily salted pasta water. Some people say they want it to taste like the ocean. I don't know that I would say go that crazy, but you definitely want salty water because it's pretty much your only opportunity for getting flavor into the pasta. So what oils are better for sautéing? You kind of want higher heat oils, or oils with a higher smoke point. So things like canola oil, vegetable oil, which I think is basically the same thing, but like grapeseed oil, pretty much like the thing that is nice about olive oil, especially extra virgin olive oil, it's got great flavor, and you completely destroy that flavor when you heat it up. So I don't know if you've seen, like the super fancy extra virgin olive oils that are like, 30, 40, 50 bucks a bottle. Those are really just for finishing, right? You pour a little bit of it on your hummus or you put some on your salad or whatever. Like you never, ever will want to heat those. And also, olive oil just has a lower smoke point than a lot of the other neutral oils. I forget what oils have the highest smoke points. I can send out like a little spreadsheet afterwards, but it makes a huge difference, what the smoke point of the oil is, because the lower the smoke point is, basically the lower you're able to cook at, if that makes any sense. So now I'm just going to kind of sliver this garlic up and then just give it a rough chop. I don't really care. It's all going to get cooked down and wind up in the sauce anyways, so nothing really fancy here. I probably should be I meant to use my little fancy blender thing. I'm probably going to end up doing that anyways for the additional garlic that goes into the garlic bread, but it's kind of whatever. This seems fine. Get that in there. This recipe, even compared to like a lasagna, it feels to me like very meat heavy. It's got almost 2 pounds, or it's got 2 pounds of meat for half of a pound of pasta, which is pretty hilarious. I mean, that's like 4 to 1 meat to pasta ratio. I'm not mad about it. Again, it really is kind of just like meat and cheese held together with pasta and a little bit. So it's great. Already added salt to this. I'm gonna go ahead and add some pepper. Just building the flavors, getting that pepper in there. And we're gonna go ahead and add our ground beef. You could add your dry spices now. No reason why you can't, but I think I might as well just get the ground beef in there, get it going. So again, 2 pounds. Pre-packaged stuff, you can get it from the butcher, you can grind your own, you can do whatever. This stuff seemed pretty decent, so the only real thing about ground beef is you got to pick what percent you want, which is basically the fat percentage. This is 85-15. It might cause us to end up needing to drain some of the fat off here, but I probably won't do it. 85-15 is about the fattest you can get. Sometimes you can find 80-20. Actually, 80-20 is fairly common. But, most of the time you're seeing 90-10. Doesn't matter a huge amount. For stuff like burgers, you want to go towards the fattier end just because the kind of, fattier it is, the juicier it will be. As long as you're not crazy overcooking it. But for applications like this where you're just going to kind of cook it all down, sometimes if you have the option, you'll trend towards the leaner stuff. I have a struggle out of the package here. Again, it doesn't really matter. There's no flavor difference other than fat is flavor. Cool. All right. We're going to pretty much cook this all the way down, then add some of the tomato. Again, the ratios in this recipe are really wacky. Normally, tomato paste to tomato sauce or whatever you want to add, diced tomatoes, is that there's much less tomato paste than there is other tomato. In this one, it's 1-to-1. So, the ratios on this are wacky, but I think that's part of what makes it so great. So we're going to follow that. I didn't want to open a thing of tomato sauce because I don't really buy tomato sauce. I kind of just buy the 28-ounce cans of fire roasted tomatoes, and I already had some left over from the other day when I used some of it in the freezer. So I just took that, blended it up to make kind of like a quote-unquote tomato sauce. So that's what this guy is here. There it is. Should work totally fine, and if not, we can always just figure something else out. So basically, going to cook this until most of the meat is looking pretty cooked. What time is it? 15 minutes. Okay. So we've got about 15 minutes before we need to get the casserole in the oven, which doesn't leave us a huge amount of time to cook this down, assemble the casserole, and get it in there, but I think we'll be okay. And if worst case scenario, we end with the casserole still in the oven, I'm not going to be, it's not going to be the end of the world. I can always send out a picture afterwards. Let's see here. Oh, so yeah, as Steve said, I'm using OBS. It's basically it's called Open Broadcasting Software, I think, is what it stands for, and it allows you to basically have whatever number of cameras you want. The tricky thing is that it's unless you're on Windows, they don't have a great support for what's called a virtual camera, which lets you, kind of assemble your own suite layout and then send it to something like BlueJeans. There is like a sort of super alpha version of a Mac driver or Mac plugin that lets you do that for OBS, which is what I'm using. But it's kind of a pain to get it set up. It seems to be pretty stable. I've been running it for a couple hours now, knock on wood, that it stays through the rest of the thing. So this is getting pretty close to where I want to start adding the tomato. The pan has really dropped in temp because a lot of this fat is rendering out and just cooling the pan down. But should come back up in a minute here. I do need more salt. I'll take a second. But it's worth doing it some more. Always use kosher salt. You can get Diamond Crystal or Morton's. I super duper prefer Diamond Crystal. It doesn't have any caking or anti-caking agents in it. So sometimes there are like clumps, but I would rather have a little bit clumpy salt than salt with the anti-caking agents that kind of, aren't just pure salt. So I'm going to add some more salt to this because, the beef is totally unseasoned. It's going to seem like a lot, but again, because it's a casserole, you kind of need to get all your seasoning in because it's pretty much impossible to season thoroughly at the end. So again, we're going to build the flavors. We're going to add a little bit at a time. Before we assemble it, we're going to taste everything individually and go from there. So now let's do some of our spices. So we've got onion powder. This is kind of the replacement for that Lipton soup. We're going to add a decent amount of this. In fact, of course I'm in. Like enough? No, a little bit more. Cool. Yeah, so a fair bit of onion powder. We're going to do some granulated garlic, which is basically garlic powder. This is a little bit finer than I would like, but it'll do. I don't know why I'm adding that, but it seemed right. I almost never use dried basil, but the recipe called for it. I can give it a shot. I think I put fresh basil on the ingredients list, but who cares? And then oregano. Love dried oregano. Great ingredient. Gives it kind of that, like, hearty Italian sauce flavor. Perfectly good dried herb. And then I'm just going to do a little bit of crushed red pepper. Not enough to really taste it, but just a little bit of zing. I was unable to find any non-pre-shredded mozzarella cheese at the store. What I mean by non-pre-shredded is I was looking for like blocks of like, kind of store brand mozzarella, like kind that you would turn into, what's in the bags of the shredded cheese. I don't love buying pre-shredded cheese just because it has, again, like anti-clumping stuff, in this case cellulose. And I actually think I can taste it, and I prefer shredding my own cheese. So I had to buy like the big blocks of fresh, or the big blobs of fresh mozzarella to do this, which are a huge pain in the ass to shred. But we got through it. So now we're going to go ahead and add our tomato now that the beef is almost totally cooked. I do want to check on my garlic. Our water is boiling, but we're not quite ready for the pasta yet, so we're going to turn that down. We're also going to get our tomato paste in here, which again feels like a ludicrous amount of tomato paste, but it's pretty much what holds it together, so here for it. Cool. I think that's just about everything that's going to go in there. But might as well take a look and just double check. This is assembled like a lasagna, so you kind of go a little bit of meat, a little bit of noodles, a little bit of one type of cheese, a little bit of other type of cheese, a little bit of meat, a little bit of noodles. The directions are extremely specific with regard to proportions. We'll see if we can stick by that. We might just make some game time decisions depending on how it's looking. I also need to decide what I'm baking this in, which is something that I meant to do and certainly did not do. But for the end of the world. Okay, so this is looking pretty good. Again, we've got 10 minutes to finish cooking this and then get it assembled. If we want it to get done by the 1 p.m. cutoff, we'll see if we make that. Why use onion powder for the fresh onion? I like both the onion powder, which kind of lends its own type of flavor, and fresh onion, in the same way that I also like the garlic powder and garlic, or in this case, granulated garlic, which is different from garlic powder most of the time. This one says garlic. Oh, this one says garlic powder. That's why. I also have granulated garlic that I meant to use, but alas. Okay, so now the pan is heating up much hotter now that most of that fat is rendered out and heated up. Definitely not pouring any fat off at this point now that I've added tomatoes, but this will be a good point to go ahead and give it a taste. Just kind of tasting for salt, pepper. Needs more salt. It is about time to start the pasta. Again, this angel hair takes very little time. Let's say 2 to 4 minutes. So it's going to be real quick. And again, only half a pound. So, kind of very. Again, I did salt this water pretty aggressively, not like insanely, but there's a lot of salt in here. I'm a big fan of timers, so even though I will probably remember that pasta, there's a chance that I don't. This got way too hot, so we're going to turn that down. Okay, it's not burned, it's just starting to get pretty darkly caramelized there on the bottom, so not a big deal. We'll just scrape it up, move stuff around so it gets some of that liquid onto the bottom of the pan, and that'll help dissolve whatever just kind of caramelized on there. So this is looking pretty good. Probably needs some more pepper. You don't have to go nuts. A lot of times when you're making a pasta sauce like this, you have to really cook it a lot to cook out what they call that raw tomato flavor. Because this is going to spend half an hour in the oven, not as important. You can get away with a little bit of that kind of uncooked tomato, especially the tomato paste, that uncooked flavor. But because we have that oven time, we can kind of rely on that to keep us good. So give it another taste. Okay, so in terms of assembly, we've got a couple of components. So we've got the meat, which is this, the pasta, which is cooking, mozzarella, which I've shredded, cottage cheese, which is a little bit weird. I mean, you might equate that to the kind of the ricotta in a typical lasagna, but I didn't ever think about it, but it makes sense, for this recipe, just because it's a little bit richer. Maybe not richer than ricotta, but it's perfect for this. And then we have Parmesan, which is also we got a giant pile of it because we're using some of it for the garlic bread as well. Which reminds me, take a look at the garlic. Good, bubbling away. Stir. So, doesn't seem like enough. Okay, now I gotta find. So that's our 2 minutes. We can kind of go a little bit under on the pasta if we want because it will have some time in the sauce in the oven, but still a little under. We're going to go 1 more minute. The sauce is done. Turn that off. Gotta find a pan. Let's do Seems like a good pan. So you could use like a sort of sheet tray style pan. I'm gonna use this one because I like it. It's really nice and heavy, so it's gonna keep a lot of heat in it and do some nice slow heat transfer. But again, you can use kind of whatever works. Okay, sauce is done. It's a little less than I would do if I was just gonna dump it into some sauce and eat it right away. But it's perfect for our purposes here. Typically want to have your calendar ready. So normally I would let this cool a little bit because this is going to be hot as hell. But, you know, nobody got time for that. Okay, so assembly. We're going to roughly try to follow the instructions here. So it says a quarter of the meat. So go ahead and just evenly spread out the meat here. We're going to divide it into 4 sections. Cool. So now let's put a quarter of it in. Ooh. Go ahead and kind of just spread that out a bit. Doesn't have to be too perfect. Nobody's really going to ever see this. It's just going to kind of melt into a delicious pile. Half the pasta. So go ahead and get this out of the way a little bit. Challenging because of how hot it is, so we'll probably be smart and use some tongs here. That seems like about half. Why not? Cool. Again, just kind of give that a little spread around. It is going to be a little bit ornery because it is angel hair, so it all wants to stick together into one giant mass. But again, just do your best, kind of even it out there. Cool. So then we're going to go with half of our mozzarella. This is a little bit deceiving because it's going to say like half mozzarella, then top it with more mozzarella. So like, good job, recipe writer. I hate you. Whatever. So something less than half of the mozzarella, just enough again to kind of give it a nice even layer. Now we're going to go half the cottage cheese. This one we can do pretty easily. Again, with kind of the divide in half and conquer method. So this is kind of the most awkward thing to spread evenly. Kind of as long as you, again, just do your best, it will be good. I'm doing kind of a weird technique where you like keep the spoon upright and kind of drip the stuff off the side of it. Works pretty okay for clumpy stuff like cottage cheese. You could also just use your hands, but it's going to be super, super messy and might not even be as good. So, but again, just do your best. Nobody's going to be mad if there's like a big clump of cottage cheese, because again, it's all going to cook together. Nobody's gonna care. And then one thing you don't want to do is try to like smooth this out with like a spatula or something. It will just become a disaster, and you will never be able to get it back to how it is right now. Okay, so half the cottage cheese, 1 more quarter of the meat. So again, this is going to be a little bit tricky because I'm not going to be able to spread it evenly like I did on the bottom. You drop a big piece, just do your best. Not about perfection. Or really most days. 1 more quarter of the meat. Pretty good. All right. Half the parm. So again, this is like more than the parm called for, but just nice little hey parm. Here we go. That's gonna be great. half the pasta. So now this is going to be even more difficult. I might, well, I wish I had done this a little bit faster because this is now a night. But if you gave this a rinse, it would kind of unclump. I don't really feel like waiting for it to drain. You could also like give it a little olive oil bath, and the noodles won't stick together quite so aggressively. But you could also just pull it apart, get in there, try to get as much as you can spread out. The only thing that will be really apparent, and it won't kind of cook all together, is if you have huge clumps of noodles. So again, just do your best. Kind of get a nice even layer of noodles. Looking pretty nice. Cool. Works for me. And everyone will be excited to know that I can see Ellie outside. So that's happening. Check on our garlic. So the garlic is looking really nice. This is actually probably just about done. I got a little bit. Where can I? Oh. So, but most of the garlic is pretty brown. It's actually a little bit more brown than I would want. So I'm going to call that done. That should have gone a little bit lower and slower, but again, we're a little bit pressed for time, so whatever. So half the pasta, we're going to go the rest of the cottage cheese. I will answer questions if there are some. And again, just want to get this in the oven. Hello.
Hello.
We're doing pretty good on time here. Oh yeah, it's like just at. This needs to go in the oven like right now, but we're almost there. All right, so half the cottage cheese, half the mozz. Oh boy. All right, so again, almost all the mozz. Save a little bit for the top. Really nice and pretty. Then quarter of the meat. Here we go. Same deal. Just kind of sprinkle it. God, this looks so good. This is so much food. Probably also the comfy garlic that's on the stove that almost burned. All right, so again, just kind of fix it up a little bit. Half the parm. I know, Charlie, life is difficult. And then the last bit of meat. Very heavy meat layer on top here. Not complaining about that at all. Okay, and then again, just give that kind of a spread. Going over there.
Use ricotta over cottage.
I'm sure you could. I've never made it with that, but it would be much more lasagna-like. You do you, though. Let me know how it is if you do that. Cool. All right, so that's done. We're just going to put the rest of the mozz on top and get in the oven. I think I've answered most of the other questions because I'm able to see them this time. Cool. Okay, so I don't think I covered this, right? Probably not. Cool. All right, so let's get this in the oven. Huzzah. Start our timer. We're going to be a couple minutes late here, but we can always pull it a minute or two early and just take a look at it. All right, 30 minutes on the clock. Let's go ahead and prep our bread for the garlic bread. Just give our workstation a little bonus meat. We'll wipe down here. Okay. Give it a wash. Okay, so for our bread, we're going to just prep this to make it as easy as possible to both get as much garlic butter in there as will fit, and also to eat. So the first thing we want to do is what? What do you think? Half?
Just you and me.
We'll do half.
And garlic bread and potatoes also get casserole.
That is accurate. So we're going to do half. Want to go ahead and cut it basically in two, like you were making a giant. Whoa, hey, that was dangerous. Like you're making a giant sandwich. And then we're going to just like cut it in almost all the way through into these like little strips. And so what that'll do is it'll allow us to get garlic in between the pieces. And then also kind of have like a pull apart bread type of situation. It also lets it get a little bit more toasty. So then you end up with this like kind of fun little bread situation. Again, I kind of wish this was a little bit of a more airy, oops, cut kind of all the way through there. More airy piece of bread and a little bit more narrow. Kind of about this size actually. This is perfect. But whatever. So the garlic bread needs to go at a higher temp, so I'm going to use my toaster oven for that. And it does say 400, but I'm going to go 400 convection, which is like the equivalent of like, I don't know, 425 regular. I like to do it a little bit hotter just so that it gets really nice and toasty. I think I've done this before, and it was like a little bit less toasty than I wanted. So in order to actually finish it, we're going to take our garlic confit, which, ooh, even got roastier. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and pour that with all the butter into our little mini blender, mini mixer. Why is Ellie eating off camera today?
There's nowhere for her to be on camera.
Oh, really?
Like, I don't know.
Oh. Well, we don't
Need a
need
fourth cam.
that camera anymore. We could do Ellie cam, dedicated Ellie cam.
I angle it to where can you see that for it? It's not on.
What?
It's not showing right
Oh, it's this one.
now.
So anyways, we have our garlic confit, which I'll show you on the Ellie cam, which is about to go away. So it's a little bit darker than I wanted it to be, but it's not burned, so that's fine. We're going to add 4 more garlic cloves, which is that many, and some salt. And we're going to give this a little pulse here. What am I doing? Oh, I need the. Perfect. Oh, God. All right, so now we've got like a garlic confit with raw garlic all together now. The only other thing I'm going to do to this is add some parsley. A little handful. You just go ahead and put it straight in here. Cool. Okay, so that is now ready to go on the bread. And this is where we're going to have pretty much the rest of the time. We're done. Because all that has to happen now is the casserole is completely done. All we have to do for the garlic bread is brush the mix that we just made onto the bread and basically toast it. So see what we have in the way of questions. Or are we just all admiring how amazing Ellie is? Ellie can. Everyone's very thankful for the Ellie cam. So what goes into the garlic bread? So it was butter, garlic, basically into a confit, which again, you kind of want it to take 45 minutes. You want it on a really low heat, lower than I did. It should just be like totally golden brown all the way through. Then you blend that with some salt and some fresh garlic to kind of give it a little bit of that bite back from the garlic. And then when that's all blended, you add a little bit of parsley. We're just going to brush it on this bread, toss it in the oven, and it's going to be freaking awesome. So go ahead and get our bread on the tray here. Don't need a pastry brush for this, but I feel like it helps. Well, I really made a big mess with that butter. I feel like it kind of helps get it into the cracks, but just go ahead and just brush this on. We're going to use this whole thing. That'd be awesome. And again, we have these nice cracks in between, so once I have gotten it over most of the top, I'm going to go ahead and try and get it in between the cuts. Oh, that's a big garlic divot right there. This is my favorite garlic bread that I've ever made. It's just really, really absurd and totally delicious. Most of the time for garlic bread, people just take raw garlic and they just blend it up with butter and toss it in the oven, and it's delicious. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's just like the garlic confit on this one just really takes it over the top. So I try to get on some on the sides as well, and then just kind of open up some of these slices and just push that garlic down in there. And at this point, the butter is all garlic flavored too, so you don't even actually need to get the garlic itself into the slices. It's just all that butter in there. This is health food, guys. You live a really long time eating this much butter for sure. Don't worry about it. Okay. Well, now we have 3 pieces. All right. Cool. So that's the garlic bread. We're going to let that hang out until the oven is at temp. Not more difficult to see. Yeah, garlic absolutely is healthy. It's right, baby. That's right. Cool. All right, so now we can do a little bit of cleanup and keep answering questions. Wouldn't it be amazing if I could like clean and be done by 1? That would be. Also, this is just like a regular. This is just a regular Blue Jeans. This is not an event. So if people have questions or want to just whatever, like they can unmute themselves and talk. I have no idea if it's going to feedback or not, but I guess we'll cross that bridge if we get to it. You always want, when you put pasta in a strainer, especially something like angel hair, is to clean it or at least rinse it before it totally dries on, because it can just be a total nightmare to get the dried starchy pasta off unless you soak it for a while. So it's the same with like when you puree garlic in that like little mini blender. If it has a chance to completely dry, you're totally hosed. You just have to let it soak. Almost at 400. Cool. What else should we talk about? Do you have questions, Beth? Yeah, tell me your questions.
Talking about what shampoo they use on their angel hair or what conditioners. I was wondering what you would. What's your preference?
Yeah, I just go au naturel. I actually just put coconut oil.
Coconut oil, perfect.
Put au naturel in music.
Yeah.
Cool. Oh, she got cheddar bites? Spices, baby. Let's get spices. Whoa. We need a new container for this. Yeah, like a Tupperware. I'll probably take care of that. The oven is ready for the garlic bread, so I'm going to go ahead and put that in. Oh, and yogurt? Man, what a day. What a day. Oh, how did...
That was me.
All right, well, if nobody has questions, I'm just going to keep cleaning because, yeah, if I can get everything done by 1, that's going to be freaking amazing.
Need help? That casserole is so easy. Yeah?
Yeah.
What did you do for the spice mix?
You mean for the onion soup mix?
Did you actually use onion soup mix?
Well, no, we didn't have any.
Right, so I thought.
Oh, yeah, we just use like powdered onion and powdered garlic and just, normal sauce stuff.
Like spices.
Like, yeah. But like, like you're making like the Detroit pizza dough or like, but I didn't add any sugar,
Yeah.
I think it's gonna be great. I'm sure that the soup mix version is delicious because you know it is. But, why does it want to get cold? It was just hot. How many more cameras? I don't know. How many webcams can I find? I think this is all the webcams in the house that I can attach to a single computer. But if I can get more webcams, I know I have one at the office. So, oh, she wants her banana.
Oh. I was going to give you avocado toast, baby.
There's banana. So, make with banana, mama.
I know. Please don't jump out of there.
Wouldn't that be a scene?
On camera.
On camera, right? Like, ooh, recorded? Fine. Totally fine. He's not jumping out of it, guys. It's never happened. I think that the fire roasted salsa, or the fire roasted tomatoes is funny.
Good.
No,
Those are the only tomatoes in there?
well, there's also one can of tomato paste. I'm sure we had some of, but I just. Oh, this is full already. An anonymous container. Ooh, that garlic bread smells good. That dark. Perfection is a bad choice. So I figured out how to pipe music directly into Blue Jeans, but I figured it out like 2 minutes before it started, and I didn't have time to figure out how to do mic and. Might have been distracting. Tough to tell. Because even when I was piping it directly in, it wasn't, like, I couldn't play it super low. It had to be, like, loud. Look at that position. What are you doing? It's crazy. Maybe she knows she's being broadcast.
No.
Yeah, so I was using a mobile phone as an additional webcam before, but it's because we're not doing Blue Jeans events anymore. We're just doing regular Blue. It's really difficult to have multiple cameras simultaneously, unless you do like the whatever it is, the layout view, and then everybody would have to have their cameras off, which I guess people already do, but whatever. This is fine. Pretty happy with this setup. I did not take a picture of this. You should probably just squeeze those lines for juice, and then just keep the juice, right?
Yeah.
That's what I could have done in the meantime. I could have made a drink. So I guess I'm going to be working after. Maybe not. Maybe that's not good. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, whatever grams. What do you got over there? You still got fluid that's making you happy? Feeling good about it? All right, sounds like the garlic bread is done. Let's see if that. All right, that's looking quite nice. How can I show this to you? Oh my God, it's fucking hot. So don't have wet hands when handling towels that are only a single layer thick because it will turn to steam and burn you very badly. Okay. Oh no, this is a better. Garlic bread. And then I wonder, we got 7 minutes left on the casserole in there. Oh, that's looking nice. That's looking nice. I don't know if I can show that to you. I can take it out of the oven. Not gonna hurt anything. That's totally wet. So, the finished product looks something like this. Cool. I'm going to leave this in the oven for about 10 more minutes so it gets nice and bubbly. But that's it. Oh, I forgot almost the most important part. You got to sprinkle some cheese on the garlic bread. Duh. Duh. That's what this Parmesan was for, guys. Probably too much Parm, but, you know, it's already been shredded. Got to do something with it. Cool. Well, that's that. Hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you think about a format in which it's possible to cook and clean in the hour. I realize that some of the point of this was doing like a cook along, not necessarily during, but like, you know, maybe the day after or sometime after. And doing an hour and a half meal with cleanup seems challenging during the workday. So if this is better and you guys want to see things that are more like, you know, 30, 40 minutes instead of an hour, let me know. But otherwise, thank you for joining. See if I have any more. I don't know, Steve. I don't know. It's just what the recipe said. That's how I've always done it. It might get too burny in the oven, maybe, possibly. Could be. Who knows? Maybe try it. Try it with the cheese in the oven. Tell me how it goes. Cool. Well, thanks, guys. Hope you have a wonderful afternoon, and I'll catch you next time.